August 18th, move-in day. It was August 18th, 2004, when my dad drove me back to Radford, Virginia. It was time to move into my dorm room and start life as a college freshman. As we cruised down I-85 in my dad's dark black GMC Suburban, I could smell the fresh scent of the mountain trees blowing in the wind. I helicoptered my window until my dad made me roll it up. He thought it would be smarter to bring a vehicle that could take the punishment of a trip to Radford. He left the Porsche at home this time, and not for its lack of room. This way, his idiot son couldn't add wiper fluid to the oil again. My dad and I sat quietly for most of the long drive, periodically striking up conversations to pass the time. I asked him to tell me any college stories that he could remember, or funny stories that would make us laugh. This helped calm my excitement, since I needed to keep a level head going into college. When I asked him about his past, he had a tough time remembering, probably because he was focused on his son's new journey. I'm sure he didn't want to tell me too many of his college stories, in an attempt to prevent me from using his tomfooleries as a hurdle for my upcoming adventure. He did tell me 3 stories in particular that I will never forget because it made me realize that he was such an epic individual in his college years. The first story he told me was just a tease of his hijinks. My dad roomed with 3 other engineers in school. Around the time The Exorcist came out, everyone was really on edge when it came to horror movies. One night, my dad and his friends decided to scare a group of girls that lived in the dorm room below them. One of his friends tied a sheet to himself, while the others lowered him out their dorm room's window. They lowered him to the girls' window below their room, and he banged on it to scare them. The girls screamed bloody murder when he banged on their 6th-floor window in the middle of the night. When he told me this, all I could think was that he didn't have to preface it with a scary movie coming out around the same time. The women they pranked were probably more petrified to see someone banging on their window in the middle of the night, 6 stories up. At the end of his story, my dad drove home the point that if they would have accidentally dropped the sheet, their friend would have plummeted to his death. My dad gave me the parental advisory warning and told me not to try it. He said that I would probably kill someone or get expelled if I did. I took a mental note, not to hang people from sheets out windows. The second of my dad's stories began like his first, peering out of his multi-level dorm's window. He and his gang of stooges would fill up black industrial garbage bags with hundreds of pounds of water. Then they would drag the bags to their windowsill. When they saw people entering the dorm, they would roll the bags out the window. When the bags hit the ground, they exploded in front of people, soaking them with water. It was like a giant water balloon. Just like with his first story, my dad was sure to warn me of the dangers of his prank. He said that if one of those garbage bags hit someone in the head, it could have killed them. At the time, his stories were hysterical to me. When I tried to picture my dad of all people doing such things, I just couldn't believe it. We laughed and laughed while my dad reminisced on what funny and dangerous pranks he had played in his youth. He took part in a lot of high-risk pranks. The stories were great for laughs and all, but if things went wrong, someone would have died. He entrusted me with stories that my brothers and sisters were not privy to. Driving to school was a good bonding experience between my father and I. We shared the same rebellious spirit. I think that with his age and wisdom, my father was much better at hiding his rebellious spirit from me. He was slowly letting me see that side, but not too much of it, in fear that I wouldn't respect him anymore. All of the stories he told me on the expedition were noteworthy, but the third and final story trumped the rest. One of his good friends that was an engineer had figured out a way to create a giant foam wave using the local water filtration plant. One night, they snuck into the plant with industrial bags of detergent and poured them into the water containers. They only added enough of the chemical to the water that it wouldn't make it unsafe to drink after filtration. According to the slightly exaggerated story, the foam wave was 20 feet high and 20 feet long. The wave chased my dad and his friends down the street. After hearing his stories, I knew I was going to have to find friends as crazy and as daring as I was. That way I could blow his stories out of the freaking water. After story time, We occasionally struck up more conversations throughout the drive. Talking helped take our minds off the fact that it was going to be one of our last road trips together for a long time. It was exciting because it was a new adventure, and sad because I wasn't sure if I was ready for college. I was leaving the first love of my life behind. I was ready to get out of my house, but I didn't feel like I was ready to plunge into the world of college at the time. It didn't matter what I wanted, though. I was leaving the nest, and a lot was riding on my success at college. I was excited that my dad was the one helping me move into my dorm. The guy I had almost lost to a battle with melanoma just a year earlier. I'm sure he had even more on his mind than I did on that ride up to school. He was still working through his own experiences, when I still had to experience so much on my own. When we arrived at the school, although I had been there before, the campus still amazed me. I couldn't believe that this would be my home for the next 4 years. The campus was huge and gorgeous. Each brick building had massive entrances, guided by shrubs and beautiful blends of rose plants with other exotic plants. Every building looked brand new, something you would only see in the movies at preppy West Coast schools. Even the bricks on the buildings were immaculate, and they looked like they had been scrubbed with a toothbrush. Each of the buildings had large sidewalks outside them, about 12 feet across, that trailed around the entire campus. The sidewalks created mazes throughout the campus. Some led to hidden entrances of buildings. The sidewalks ensured fast travel to any inter-campus destination. Most of the buildings had lights outside them to ensure the paths were well lit at night. Most buildings boasted large trees or flowers outside of them that looked to have been growing for 20 years or more. The plants and trees had lived through thousands of urinations, vomits, beers, and abuse, making their survival impressive. I couldn't understand how something could be so well kept, despite the partying and mayhem happening within Radford. The campus was welcoming and comforting right from the start. Finding a place to park wasn't too bad. My dad found an open spot by the library. We only had to walk up about 100 stairs, then walk another 100 yards to get to the entrance of my building. Once to the dorms, we walked up the 4 flights of stairs while carrying all of my belongings, one trip at a time. I felt so confined carrying my TV up the stairwell, and I thought I'd surely drop it. It took quite some time to carry everything up. My TV, my computer, school bags, a few boxes, and school supplies. I had to jockey for a position for my feet on each stair. The 13-story staircase was full of people both coming and going. I did most of the heavy lifting because my dad was still recovering from having so many surgeries. It was cool because I got to hang out with him for a bit longer. My roommate wasn't there yet, so I just picked a closet and bed in the tiny room. My dad helped me unpack some of my stuff. I told him to stop helping me unpack when he started getting too intrusive. I didn't want him finding anything he shouldn't have. When we were done unloading everything in the dorm, he drove me to the barber shop. He pulled up next to the curb, outside the entrance to a barber shop, and told me that he loved me. He pulled out a big wad of cash from his pocket. He said that it was all the money he had, and he wished he had more to give me. He told me that he wanted me to do well, gave me a long hug, and wished me good luck. I said, "Thanks, Dad. That's more than enough. I love you." I didn't know what else to say. Looking back now, I should have told him that I just wanted to make him proud.